I'm wondering how you think about this. Again, I'm sure you know a million people in your life who you love or who you just know well, who think the word genocide means the Holocaust, and it's this horrifying foundational trauma in their lives, in their communities' lives, and they feel like using the term genocide is comparing or equating the two. And I think
I have limited sympathy for it. I've certainly gotten into those kinds of arguments. I do think there's an opportunity to patiently, with people who are sincerely interested, to patiently discuss what genocide is, because it's become increasingly obvious to me that a lot of people have no idea what genocide is.
I think that's right, yeah.
And seem to think that unless it is literally the Holocaust down to every last detail, then, I think people have some theoretical knowledge that, one or two other genocides have existed, but they often don't know them with any degree of specificity. And so you see ridiculous arguments from people like Bret Stephens, who I don't really think is arguing in good faith, but saying things like, well, why aren't all the Palestinians dead then, right?
Right.
Which you could say about literally any genocide in history, including the Holocaust.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but they're still Jews, right? Not every Jew in Europe was killed, so maybe it wasn't. No, it's such a silly, it's worse than silly. It's such an offensive and small-minded way to think about genocide.
Agreed.
The Armenian Genocide was, which I'm by no means an expert on, but as I understand it, was basically forced marches of ethnic Armenians out of Turkish territory, during which enormous numbers of them died. Sometimes because they were killed, other times because they were in the desert and, not being fed or didn't have water or whatever, and they died in enormous numbers. There were still Armenians after that, but the Turkish goal of depopulating Armenian areas of Turkey to consolidate the modern Turkish nation state, which to this day the Turkish government does not acknowledge was a genocide, that's a genocide. That's frankly a more typical genocide in a lot of ways than the Holocaust. And of course, American history, as many Americans have trouble coming to terms with, I think it gets talked about less than slavery does these days. But American history is a series of settler colonial genocides, among other things, that are, the Trail of Tears, that are basically indigenous populations being marched out of their land so it could be seized and settled by white Europeans. And that is the history of America. It's the history of Canada. It's the history of Australia. And I think it is a pretty good guide, not just to what's been happening in Gaza lately, and I know this is a hard pill for many, many Jews and others to swallow, but really for the entire modern history of the State of Israel. I think, if you're familiar with the history of the Nakba, you understand that Israel began with displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes. This is still, I think, unspeakable in a lot of contexts, even though Israeli historians who defend it, acknowledge that is what happened.